Just a word before I begin. Those of you who hang out at St. George's regularly know that normally I don't have notes in front of me when I'm preaching, but the way that the sermon developed this week, I needed a little bit more precision in what I was saying, and so this morning I am using a full text. Last night, my husband Dan and I went into downtown Toronto for an incredible evening of music. James Moffat, some of you know, is a parishioner at St. George's, and he is a composer. He is also a man who is living with cancer. Last night was the debut of some of his newest compositions. He named the concert Songs for Living, and it was the world premiere of 3 original song cycles that James had written: Songs of Absence, Sheet Music, and The Lavender Fields. The music of last night was a document of James' reignited devotion to the work of composing. He started composing again as a response to his cancer diagnosis. The Lavender Fields was the 3rd of the song cycles, and its subtitle was Living with Cancer. It featured not only his original music, but also his poetry. He wrote those words to give expression to some of his own experience of the shocking discovery of his body going rogue on him. The song cycle began with these words: "Before you've even thought about it, or anyone has named it for you, your cells have been busy betraying your body, secretly amassing, multiplying. Tiny pieces of you are trying to kill you. Their swelling rebellion is still unnoticed. Altogether, they make a mass only 1 centimeter across, but there are already 100 million of them. You're not scared yet." I share James' words with you this morning because many of you know James and have been supporting James and his family through his illness. Many of you know something of him and of his family's story. But I also share this because James speaks of a more universal experience too. Who among us hasn't had cancer impact our lives or the life of someone we love? Who hasn't sat in a doctor's office at one point or another and heard bad news delivered of cancer or of another one of the body's betrayals or of the mind's betrayal? Who hasn't received that news themselves or received that news with a family member? Who doesn't know what it is to receive that devastating phone call that changes everything? Who hasn't faced moments where the rug of certainty and stability and predictability is yanked out from underneath you, and the world is suddenly a very different place? Most of us at one time or another are brought face to face with the fragile nature of this whole human enterprise. My body and the bodies of those I love are vulnerable. We get sick. Our bodies break down. We know loss. We die. 5 weeks ago, we began our Lenten journey, and we began our Lenten journey with Ash Wednesday words: remember that you are dust, and to dust you shall return. Those words marked not just the start of Lent, they also marked the start of our preparation for Easter. We have to begin our journey toward Easter with a reminder of dust. Because we can't and we don't understand what God does in Easter without first knowing the truth about what it is to be human. Here today, we are 2 weeks away from Easter, and we get a gospel story that stands in the space between, that space between death and life, that space that we claim as holy ground. We have this beautiful story of the anointing of Jesus at Bethany. Now, a version of this story is featured in all 4 gospel accounts of Jesus' life. Today, we're looking at that account from the Gospel of John. The story takes place in the final week of Jesus' life. It takes place in the home of Jesus' dear friends, Martha, Mary, and Lazarus. And it takes place shortly after one of Jesus' greatest and most stunning miracles, the raising of Lazarus from the dead. Lazarus has been dead for 4 full days, and Jesus raised him back to life with one simple command: Lazarus, come out. Now, Jesus and Lazarus and Mary and Martha and all of their friends are sharing this celebratory dinner. It's a dinner that's offered with tremendous gratitude for Lazarus' life reclaimed. But there are growing shadows around this story. There is now an active plot to put Jesus to death because of his powers revealed in this miracle. Because his powers are amassing a following, and because the religious leaders of the day are frightened by Jesus' power and popularity. Lazarus is also implicated in this plot. The religious leaders want to kill Lazarus again. They really want to finish him off this time and to snatch away the life that he has so recently regained. In the midst of this, Mary of Bethany, Lazarus' sister, comes forward. Now, you might remember Mary from other stories in the Bible. She's often upheld as a sort of mystic. She is the one who we visualize sitting at the feet of Jesus. She's the one who suspends her household duties and all of the things around her that need to get done so that she can be close to Jesus, so that she can listen and learn from Jesus. Jesus, in a move that is named as rather progressive and even kind of feminist, defends Mary's right to do just that. Jesus defends her right to not have to do the dishes, but instead to be his student and to learn from him as well. Now, in this story, as a gesture of this incredible gratitude that she feels for what Jesus did for her brother, Mary comes forward and she anoints Jesus' feet with the most precious thing that she owns, a pound of expensive perfumed oil. In some of the other gospel accounts of this story, the woman who anoints Jesus' feet is nameless. And she is criticized for being a sinful woman, which is kind of code for maybe being a prostitute. But here, Mary is criticized not for being sinful. She is criticized, and she's criticized by Judas, of all people. She's criticized for being wasteful, for squandering this precious gift in such a terribly impractical manner. And again, Jesus defends her. He defends her and he names those shadows that are growing around them. Jesus says that Mary has anointed him for his burial. He is soon going to die. He is going to die brutally. And he receives this as an act of care and kindness for his own fragile body. So there we have around this supper table, we have Lazarus, who has been resurrected from the dead, pointing to the promise of God's ultimate power and great love. And we have Jesus, who's naming the truth of the brokenness and vulnerability of what it is to be human. And between Lazarus and Jesus, we have Mary, who names the truth of why we are here. What it is we are invited to figure out with these fragile bodies. What it is to be human, and what it is to say yes to that partnership. To say yes to that partnership that's revealed and embodied in Jesus. The partnership that promises light and life even in the face of death. Partnership with God. A friend pointed out to me yesterday that in John's gospel, the next thing that we see Jesus do after this dinner and after this anointing is we see Jesus at the Last Supper. And what does Jesus then choose to do? But to anoint the feet of his friends, washing their feet as his act of love toward them, his commissioning of them into loving service before his death. Here in this story today, we can see that perfumed oil as representing the extravagant and beautiful gift God gives us in giving us life. Somehow or other, we are invited to figure out what it is to pour out that gift from our own fragile bodies, from our own fragile hearts, in order to anoint, bless, care for, love another fellow traveler. And maybe on our own, maybe this offering does look kind of like not much of anything. Maybe Judas is right. Maybe it's just a waste. But with God, it becomes a window into eternity. With God, it becomes part of all of the gifts and beauty that God gathers up and raises up and does not let die. Mary's story can also be our story. Between death and life, we also stand on holy ground. And God promises to meet us there. Last night it was James Moffat's turn to tell this story. Last night a group of exceptionally talented musicians came together to perform the music of our brother in faith, James. Who has cancer? And that concert was called Songs for Living. James is living with cancer. No matter how that illness unfolds in him, he is living. James and his family are choosing to live into the extravagance of each day's life and blessing and small kindnesses in the midst of what could otherwise feel like life falling apart. James chose to partner with others to bring his music to life and to share it. The words and the music that he has written are a blessing, not just to the musicians who performed it, not just to the audience who heard it, but to any of us who know what it is to hear news that we never wanted to hear, and yet who have glimpsed or experienced or even just want to learn how to trust that God's promise is good, that God's light and love will meet us there and will shine through the shadows. Last night I got to hear and see a pouring out of that costly perfume of one person's life, the pouring out of that costly perfume with extravagant generosity. And the sweet perfume of that offering filled the room and spills out into the world. James's song cycle, The Lavender Fields, ends with a song called The Gift. And I want to end my words today with James's words. Every today is a gift that you want to open slowly, carefully, revealing unexpected treasures. Like a child's birthday party, dear friends and family circle you, love in their eyes, wishing you happiness. With you, they treasure every present moment.